Question 1. A local animal control officer, Samantha, has been called to investigate a case of a dog attacking a passerby in a public park. The dog has been identified as a large breed with a history of aggressive behavior. Upon arrival, Samantha assesses the situation and realizes that the dog is not secured by a leash and is roaming free in a high-traffic area. What should Samantha do next, given her responsibilities and the local laws on it? Control. A. Immediately cease the dog without considering the circumstances and ensure it is euthanized as a public safety measure. B. Secure the dog using appropriate restraint equipment, evaluate its condition, and follow the established protocols for animal behavior assessments and public safety. C. Allow the dog to continue roaming freely as long as it doesn't pose an immediate threat. D. Release the dog back to its owner after a brief investigation, as long as the owner appears cooperative. Answer. B. Secure the dog using appropriate restraint equipment, evaluate its condition, and follow the established protocols for animal behavior assessments and public safety. Explanation. Samantha's actions must comply with local laws on animal control, specifically those involving the safety of both animals and the public. Securing the dog is the first step, ensuring she uses proper restraint equipment to prevent further harm. According to government regulations, an animal that poses danger to public safety should be assessed to determine its behavior, not immediately euthanized. The officer must also consider the dog's condition and follow due process before taking any further action. Local authorities often have guidelines on how to handle aggressive animals, including mandatory behavior assessments and potential rehabilitation programs before considering more drastic measures. Question 2. Which of the following is the most important consideration when managing a wildlife control situation involving a non-native, invasive species threatening a local ecosystem? A. The use of lethal methods for population control is always justified in the case of invasive species. B. The invasive species should be removed using humane traps and relocated to a more suitable environment. C. Legal considerations, including regulations on the use of invasive species control methods and environmental impacts, must be prioritized. D. Public relations efforts should focus on emphasizing the benefits controlling non-native species, rather than on the legal or environmental implications. Answer. C. Legal considerations, including regulations on the use of invasive species control methods and environmental impacts, must be prioritized. Explanation. Managing invasive species involves multiple layers of consideration, particularly the legal framework surrounding their control. Ethical, environmental, and legal issues must be addressed before implementing control measures. The use of non-lethal methods such as humane traps or relocation is often subject to regulatory guidelines, and invasive species management must align with these. Local laws may restrict certain control practices, and professionals in the field must ensure that any actions taken do not inadvertently cause harm to the ecosystem. Public relations play a role but must always be secondary to the legal and environmental considerations. Question 3. Scenario-based. Mr. Mitchell is a local animal control officer who has received a call about a cat that has been trapped in a neighbor's yard. The cat appears to be healthy but is acting aggressively toward anyone who tries to approach it. The neighbors have been complaining about the presence of stray animals, but they do not want any harm to come to the cat. Mr. Mitchell is unsure whether he should release the cat back into the neighborhood or take it. Further evaluation. What should Mr. Mitchell do next based on his responsibilities under animal welfare laws? A. Release the cat back into the neighborhood as long as it doesn't pose an immediate danger as the neighbors are requesting it. B. Take the cat to veterinarian for evaluation and consider whether behavioral modification is needed before releasing it back into the neighborhood. C. Immediately euthanize the cat since it is displaying aggressive behavior, even though it appears to be healthy. D. Leave the cat in the trap overnight and return to evaluate the situation. Later die. Answer. B. Take the cat to a veterinarian for evaluation and consider whether behavioral modification is needed before releasing it back into the neighborhood. Explanation. Mr. Mitchell must prioritize the welfare of the animal while also addressing public concerns. Aggressive behavior in a stray cat may indicate underlying stress, fear, or health issues which should be assessed by a veterinarian. According to animal welfare laws, animal control are required to ensure that any stray or trapped animals are evaluated for potential health problems and behavioral concerns before any decisions are made. Immediate release without assessment could lead to further aggression or harm, either to the cat or to others. Behavioral modification or even relocation to a suitable shelter might be necessary depending on the evaluation. Therefore, releasing the cat without proper evaluation would not meet the standard of ethical animal control practices. Question 4. In managing an animal control operation, the local government has mandated that all animals found roaming without identification tags must be taken to the local shelter. However, a dog is found that has no tags but has been well cared for and is clearly someone's pet. What should an animal control officer do next, considering both local regulations and best practices for animal welfare? A. Immediately confiscate the dog and place it in the shelter for 7 days, regardless of the dog's condition or potential ownership. B. Attempt to locate the dog's owner by scanning. 4. A microchip, checking local lost pet listings and notifying local shelters before impounding it. C. Release the dog back into the neighborhood after making sure it is healthy, as it seems to be a well cared for pet. D. Confiscate the dog and place it in a boarding facility until its owner claims it, ensuring no public access to the animal. Answer. B. Attempt to locate the dog's owner by scanning. 4. A microchip, checking local lost pet listings and notifying local shelters before impounding it. Explanation. Local government regulations typically require animals found roaming without identification tags to be impounded for a certain period, but an officer should first attempt to identify the animal's owner, scanning for microchip, consulting lost pet reports, and notifying them. Shelters are best practices to ensure the pet is returned to its rightful owner, which is in line with animal welfare laws. Simply impounding or releasing the dog without proper identification could violate both ethical standards and legal requirements for handling lost pets. Question 5. An animal control officer is tasked with investigating a complaint about a property where multiple dogs are being kept in overcrowded conditions. The officer arrives to find the animals in unsanitary conditions with insufficient food and water. Which action should the officer prioritize based on ethical considerations and local animal welfare laws? A. Immediately remove all the dogs from the property and issue a citation to the owner for neglect. B. Report the situation to local authorities and give the owner 24 hours to correct the conditions before taking any further action. C. Conduct an assessment of the property and animals, providing the owner with guidance on improving conditions while ensuring compliance with local animal welfare standards. D. Leave the property without intervention, as it is the owner's responsibility to manage their animals. Answer. C. Conduct an assessment of the property and animals, providing the owner with guidance on improving conditions while ensuring compliance with local animal welfare standards. Explanation. Animal welfare laws often require officers to assess the situation thoroughly before taking action. While immediate intervention may be necessary in cases of severe neglect, the officer's first responsibility is to ensure the animal's immediate well-being and address the condition that could be improved. By providing guidance and a clear path to compliance, the officer balances legal and ethical obligations, ensuring that the owner is aware of their responsibilities while upholding the standards of animal welfare. Question 6. A local animal control officer receives a report of an exotic pet, specifically a venomous snake, being kept in a private residence without the necessary permits. The snake is housed improperly and presents a safety risk to both the pet owners and the community. What should the officer do next according to local regulations on exotic animal control? A. Immediately seize the snake, ensure its safety, and consult with animal experts for relocation to a suitable environment. B. Issue a fine to the pet owners and give them 30 days to correct the situation by obtaining the proper permits. C. Leave the snake in the home but require the owners to take steps to secure the enclosure within the next week. D. Encourage the owners to release the snake into the wild, as it is an exotic species and should be confined in captivity. Answer. A. Immediately seize the snake, ensure its safety, and consult with animal experts for relocation to a suitable environment. Explanation. The keeping of exotic or dangerous animals without proper permits is subject to strict regulation for both safety and ethical reasons. The officer must ensure that the venomous snake is properly contained and relocated to a safer environment, as it poses a risk to public safety and its own welfare. According to laws on exotic animal control, authorities have the right to seize animals that are not properly cared for or legally kept, and relocating the animal to an appropriate sanctuary or expert facility is often the best course of action. Question 7. Scenario-based. Mr. Roberts, an animal control officer, is called to a farm where the owner claims that several cows are displaying symptoms of a contagious disease. Upon arrival, Mr. Roberts observes that the cows appear lethargic, have coughing symptoms, and are isolated from the rest of the herd. The farmer insists that the cows have been isolated and that there is no need for concern. However, Mr. Roberts is aware of recent outbreaks of similar disease in nearby farms. What should Mr. Roberts do to ensure both the safety of the animals and public health? A. Immediately euthanize the affected cows to prevent any potential spread of disease, as this will reduce the risk to the community. B. Advise the farmer to continue isolating the cows, but make no further action as long as the animals are being cared for. C. Conduct a health assessment and collect samples for veterinary testing while advising the farmer to increase biosecurity measures on the farm. D. Release the cows back into the herd after the farmer to monitor them, assuming the symptoms are mild. Answer. C. Conduct a health assessment and collect samples for veterinary testing while advising the farmer to increase biosecurity measures on the farm. Explanation. Public health concerns regarding animal diseases, particularly contagious ones, require immediate attention and assessment. Mr. Roberts should conduct a thorough health assessment and ensure that veterinary testing is done to confirm the nature of the disease. Biosecurity measures should also emphasize to prevent further spread. Animal control officers must act in accordance with public safety laws, which include ensuring that potentially contagious diseases are identified and controlled through proper protocols. Euthanasia should only be considered after thorough evaluation and in the case of confirmed, highly contagious or dangerous diseases. Question 8. A local animal shelter is facing a situation where it is over capacity and several animals are waiting for placement. The shelter has limited resources and needs to prioritize which animals should be placed first. What ethical framework should the shelter adopt to make this decision? A. Animals that have been at the shelter the longest should be placed first, regardless of their condition or temperament. B. The shelter should prioritize animals based on their likelihood of being adopted, considering factors like breed and age. C. Priority should be given to animals that pose a risk to public health or safety, regardless of their temperament or adoptability. D. A decision should be made based on the animal's overall health and wealth, prioritizing those in the most urgent need of care or rehabilitation. Answer. D. A decision should be made based on the animal's overall health and welfare, prioritizing those in the most urgent need of care or rehabilitation. Explanation. In animal control and welfare, ethical decisions should be driven by the immediate welfare and health needs of the animals, prioritizing animals that require urgent medical attention, rehabilitation, or protection from neglect aligns with the ethical standards of animal care and welfare. Factors like adoptability and public safety are important. They should not override the need to address immediate welfare concerns for the animals in the most critical condition. Such decisions are often guided by both ethical and legal frameworks that govern animal care. Question 9. An animal control officer is responding to a complaint about a dog that is suspected of being aggressive toward children in a local neighborhood. Upon arrival, the officer finds the dog chained in the yard with visible signs of stress, and it is growling at the officer. The owner claims the dog is harmless and simply protective of its territory. What should the officer do to ensure the safety of both the dog and the community? A. Seize the dog immediately and proceed to have it evaluated for aggression and behavior modification. B. Leave the dog in the yard and provide the owner with a warning asking them to keep the dog inside during the day. C. Recommend that the dog be left in the yard as it is simply territorial and does not pose a risk. D. Release the dog after confirming that it has been chained securely and does not pose an immediate danger. Answer. A. Seize the dog immediately and proceed to have it evaluated for aggression and behavior modification. Explanation. The officer must prioritize public safety and the well-being of the dog. Visible signs of stress and growling indicate potential aggression, and the dog's behavior should be assessed by a professional for any underlying issues that could pose danger. Local regulations and ethical standards may require the officer to seize the animal for evaluation to determine whether it poses danger to others. Behavior modification may be necessary to address the dog's aggression, and the owner may need to be educated on responsible pet management practices. Question 10. A resident reports that their neighbor is keeping several exotic birds in a small, overcrowded cage. The birds appear stressed, with visible signs of feather plucking and excessive noise. The officer investigates and finds that the cage is too small for the number of birds and lacks enrichment. The owner insists that the birds are well cared for and that they simply make noise due to their nature. What should the officer do next, considering animal welfare standards? A. Immediately remove the birds and place them in a rescue facility, as overcrowding and stress are clear violations of animal welfare laws. B. Advise the owner to increase the cage size and add enrichment, giving them 30 days to comply with local regulations. C. Leave the situation as it is, as the owner seems to care for the birds and they are not in immediate danger. D. Provide the owner with a warning and leave the premises, as the birds are not severe enough to warrant intervention. Answer. B. Advise the owner to increase the cage size and add enrichment, giving them 30 days to comply with local regulations. Explanation. In this case, while the birds are displaying signs of stress, the officer's priority should be to educate the owner about proper animal care and provide them with reasonable amount of time to correct the situation. Overcrowding and lack of enrichment may violate local animal welfare laws, but the officer should first provide the owner with guidance on how to improve the bird's living conditions. Balance between immediate intervention and offering the owner chance to comply is appropriate. Question 11. A call is received reporting that a pet rabbit has escaped from a fenced yard and is now wandering through a busy neighborhood. The owner is unsure of how to catch the rabbit safely. As an animal control officer, what is the most effective approach to handling the situation? A. Wait for the rabbit to return to its home, as it is likely to find its way back. B. Catch the rabbit as quickly as possible, even if it involves using a net or cage to prevent injury from traffic. C. Offer advice to the owner to set up food and a safe area to lure the rabbit back, then monitor the area for a few hours. D. Immediately call in a wildlife control specialist, as the rabbit is now a wild animal. Answer. C. Offer advice to the owner to set up food and a safe area to lure the rabbit back, then monitor the area for a few hours. Explanation. In this situation, the officer should prioritize the safety and well-being of the rabbit by offering advice to the owner about how to safely lure it back using food or familiar items. Rushing to capture the rabbit could stress the animal further and increase the risk of injury, especially if it is in an area with traffic. Monitoring the area while allowing the rabbit to return on its own is often the safest and least intrusive option. Question 12. Scenario-based. An animal control officer receives a report about a neighbor dog that barks excessively during the night. The owner has received several complaints but argues that the dog is just vocal and is not a nuisance. The officer observes the dog during a night visit and notices that it is constantly pacing and barking at nothing in particular. What should the officer do next? A. Issue a citation for excessive noise and order the dog to be removed from the premises. B. Advise the owner to bring the dog indoors during the night to reduce disturbances, but give them a chance to correct the behavior. C. Investigate whether the dog may be suffering from an underlying medical or behavioral issue and provide the owner with recommendations for resolving it. D. Leave the situation as is, as barking alone does not warrant intervention unless it is causing specific harm. Answer. C. Investigate whether the dog may be suffering from an underlying medical or behavioral issue and provide the owner with recommendations for resolving it. Explanation. Excessive barking can be a sign of stress, anxiety, or an undiagnosed medical or behavioral issue. The officer should prioritize addressing the dog's well-being by investigating the cause of the barking and offering guidance to the owner, recommending solutions such as behavioral training. Medical attention, if needed, is a more ethical and effective approach than simply penalizing the owner for the dog's behavior. Question 13. During a routine inspection of a local pet store, an animal control officer notices that the cages for small mammals appear overcrowded, with multiple animals housed in enclosures too small for their size. Some of the animals appear stressed, and the store has inadequate food and water supplies. What is the officer's first course of action? A. Issue a citation and immediately close the store for violating local animal welfare laws. B. Contact local authorities and advise the store owner to remedy the situation within a specified time frame, including providing adequate space, food, and water. C. Seize the animals and place them in a rescue facility, as overcrowding and stress are serious violations. D. Provide a warning to the store owner, asking them to increase the cage size, improve conditions, but do not take further action. Answer. B. Contact local authorities and advise the store owner to remedy the situation within a specified time frame, including providing adequate space, food, and water. Explanation. While the situation may be concerning, the officer's primary goal should be to ensure that the store owner addresses the issues before taking further punitive measures, advising the store owner on the proper care of the animals and giving them a specific timeline to correct. Overcrowding and lack of resources allows the store to come into compliance with regulations while also ensuring the welfare of the animals. If the conditions are not improved, further action, such as citation or seizure, may be warranted. Question 14. An animal control officer receives a complaint about a dog that is being kept in a backyard with no shelter from the elements. The dog is outside in hot weather without access to shade or water. What should the officer do to address this situation? A. Immediately remove the dog from the property and issue a citation to the owner for neglect. B. Provide the owner with a warning and allow them to remedy the situation within 24 hours by providing shade and water. C. Leave the dog in the yard, as the owner has the right to care for the animal as they see fit. D. Only issue a warning if the dog is not visibly harmed, as the dog will likely be fine without shelter in hot weather. Answer. B. Provide the owner with a warning and allow them to remedy the situation within 24 hours by providing shade and water. Explanation. The officer should ensure the dog's immediate needs are met by advising the owner to provide adequate shelter, shade, and water. The officer may issue warning and provide reasonable time frame for the owner to correct the situation. Animal control laws typically focus on preventing neglect, and while immediate action may be necessary in extreme cases, the officer should first work to educate the owner and give them an opportunity to comply with basic animal care requirements. Question 15. An animal control officer responds to a complaint about a dog that has been left tied up in the front yard for several days without access to food, water, or shelter. The dog appears lethargic and is visibly dehydrated. What is the officer's most appropriate course of action? A. Immediately remove the dog from the property and issue a citation for neglect. B. Provide the owner with a warning and give them 48 hours to improve the dog's conditions. C. Attempt to contact the owner and ask them to provide the necessary food, water, and shelter while monitoring the dog's health. D. Leave the dog in place and advise the owner to be more mindful of the dog's needs in the future. Answer. A. Immediately remove the dog from the property and issue a citation for neglect. Explanation. In this situation, the dog is clearly suffering from neglect due to dehydration and lack of shelter, which could lead to further harm or even death. Immediate action is necessary to protect the animal. Removal of the dog and issuing a citation are appropriate steps to ensure the dog's safety and to enforce animal welfare laws. Question 16. During a routine inspection at an animal shelter, an officer finds that some of the animals are housed in overcrowded conditions with limited space to move around. Several cages are so small that the animals are unable to lie down comfortably. What should the officer do first? A. Contact the local authorities and demand that the shelter be shut down immediately. B. Provide a written notice of the violations and give the shelter 10 days to improve the conditions before re-inspecting. C. Immediately remove the animals from the shelter to another location. D. Leave the shelter as is, as overcrowding is a common issue in animal shelters and doesn't warrant immediate action. Answer. B. Provide a written notice of the violations and give the shelter 10 days to improve the conditions before re-inspecting. Explanation. Overcrowded conditions violate animal welfare laws, but immediate action may not always be necessary if the shelter is given a reasonable time frame to improve. Providing written notice and setting a re-inspection date allows the shelter to rectify the issue while ensuring the animal's welfare. If the situation is corrected within the given time, further action may be required. Question 17. An animal control officer receives a complaint about a stray dog that is seen regularly rummaging through trash in a neighborhood. The officer observes the dog, which appears malnourished but does not seem aggressive. What should the officer do in this situation? A. Capture the dog and bring it to a shelter, as it is likely homeless and in need of medical attention. B. Leave the dog where it is, as it is not posing a threat to the community and may be able to find food elsewhere. C. Post a notice in the neighborhood asking the community to keep an eye on the dog but take no further action. D. Monitor the dog for several days and then contact the owner if the dog is not seen again. Answer A. Capture the dog and bring it to a shelter as it is likely homeless and in need of medical attention. Explanation. The dog appears malnourished, which indicates it may be astray in need of care. Capturing the dog and taking it to a shelter ensures it can receive necessary medical attention and be evaluated for reharming. Leaving the dog to fend for itself may put it at further risk, especially if it's not aggressive but malnourished. Question 18. An officer receives a complaint about a neighbor's cat that has been wandering freely around the neighborhood and causing damage to gardens. The officer observes that the cat appears healthy but is causing disturbances. What should the officer do? A. Issue a citation to the owner for allowing the cat to roam freely. B. Advise the cab owner to keep the cat indoors or confine it to a designated area to prevent damage to property. C. Capture the cat and take it to a shelter as it is causing problems in the neighborhood. D. Leave the cat alone as it is not causing harm to people or other animals. Answer. B. Advise the cat owner to keep the cat indoors or confine it to a designated area to prevent damage to property. Explanation. While the cat is causing damage to gardens, it appears to be healthy and may not require immediate intervention. The officer should advise the owner to keep the cat indoors or contained in a designated area to prevent further disturbances. This approach allows the owner to resolve the issue without taking punitive action. Question 19. Scenario-based. A resident calls animal control after finding a baby bird that has fallen from a tree. The bird is not injured but appears to be too young to fly. The caller is concerned that the bird may not survive if left on the ground. How should the officer respond? A. Advise the caller to leave the bird where it is and monitor it, as the parent birds may be nearby. B. Take the bird to a wildlife rescue facility immediately as it is in danger. C. Remove the bird and provide care until it is old enough to fly, keeping it in captivity until it can be released. D. Advise the caller to bring the bird inside and keep it as a pet until it is old enough to care for itself. Answer A. Advise the caller to leave the bird where it is and monitor it, as the parent birds may be nearby. Explanation. In most cases, baby birds that have fallen from their nests are not abandoned and the parents are still nearby watching over them. The officer should advise the caller to leave the bird alone, as handling it unnecessarily can lead to stress for the animal and discourage the parents from returning. If the bird is injured or there is no sign of then the officer can intervene. Question 20. An animal control officer receives a report about a family of raccoons living in the attic of a local residence. The family is concerned about the animals causing damage to the structure, but the raccoons are not presenting an immediate threat to humans or pets. What is the officer's best course of action? A. Remove the raccoons immediately, as they are a nuisance to the homeowners. B. Wait for the raccoons to leave the attic on their own and monitor the situation. C. Contact licensed wildlife rehabilitation center to safely remove the raccoons. D. Advise the homeowner to seal the attic and wait for the raccoons to find another place to live. Answer. C. Contact a licensed wildlife rehabilitation center to safely remove the raccoons. Explanation. Since raccoons are a protected species and the situation is not an immediate threat, the officer should contact a licensed wildlife rehabilitation center. These professionals can safely and humanely remove the animals while minimizing harm to both the raccoons and the structure. Simply waiting for the animals to leave or sealing the attic might lead to complications, such as the animals causing additional damage or becoming trapped. Question 21. An animal control officer investigates a report of a dog that has been barking excessively in a backyard for several hours every day. Upon inspection, the officer finds the dog in a secure, well-maintained fence with plenty of water and food, but does not observe any signs of neglect. What should the officer do in this situation? A. Issue a noise complaint to the dog's owner for the disturbance. B. Suggest to the owner that they provide more mental stimulation for the dog to alleviate the barking. C. Confiscate the dog due to the excessive barking and take it to a shelter. D. Leave the situation as it is, as there is no violation of animal welfare laws. Answer. B. Suggest to the owner that they provide more mental stimulation for the dog to alleviate the barking. Explanation. Excessive barking can be a sign of boredom or lack of stimulation rather than neglect. The officer should suggest solutions to the owner, such as more exercise, toys, or interaction, to alleviate the barking behavior. Since there are no signs of neglect, taking further action such as confiscating the dog is not appropriate. The goal is to address the behavior while ensuring the dog's welfare. Question 22. A local shelter has been reported for housing animals in unsanitary conditions. The officer arrives to find multiple cages with waste accumulated inside, a foul odor, and several animals showing signs of stress. What is the officer's immediate priority? A. Shut down the shelter and remove all the animals immediately. B. Provide warning and give the shelter 24 hours to clean the cages before re-inspecting. C. Report the findings to the local health department and give the shelter a week to clean the premises. D. Contact the shelter's management to discuss the issues and give them written warning to improve. Answer A. Shut down the shelter and remove all the animals immediately. Explanation: in situations where animals are in unsanitary and potentially harmful conditions, the officer's priority must be to ensure the immediate safety and well-being of the animals. The shelter must be shut down temporarily to prevent further harm, and the animals should be removed to a safer environment for proper care. Ignoring or giving the shelter extra time would be negligent, with visible signs of stress and unsanitary conditions. Question 23, scenario-based. Ceres, a local animal control officer who receives a complaint about a neighbor's dog that is regularly left outside during cold winter months. The dog is shivering and shows signs of discomfort. Sarah knows that the dog has a shelter, but it is inadequate for the cold weather. What is the most appropriate action for Sarah to take? A. Immediately seize the dog and bring it to the shelter for care. B. Provide the dog owner with a warning and request they improve the shelter within a specified time frame. C. Call the local authorities to report the violation and let them take over. D. Give the dog a blanket and leave it at the property until the next day. Answer B. Provide the dog owner with a warning and request they improve the shelter within a specified time frame. Explanation: in this case, Sarah should focus on educating the dog owner about the importance of providing adequate shelter in cold weather, as leaving the dog exposed could be harmful. Issuing a warning with a reasonable time frame for improvement is an appropriate and educational response. Immediate seizure of the dog may not be necessary if the shelter is deemed to be lacking but not dangerously inadequate. If no improvement is made within the given time frame, more serious action can be taken. Question 24. An animal control officer receives a complaint about a neighbor who has a pet snake that has escaped from its enclosure. The snake is non-venomous and poses no immediate threat to the public. What should the officer do in this situation? A. Leave the snake to find its way back into the enclosure. B. Capture the snake and return it to the owner. C. Call a wildlife specialist to handle the snake as it could become a danger to the ecosystem. D. Immediately confiscate the snake and issue a citation to the owner for negligence. Answer B. Capture the snake and return it to the owner. Explanation: while the snake has escaped, it is non-venomous and not posing an immediate risk to public safety or the environment. The most appropriate course of action is for the officer to capture the snake and return it to the owner, ensuring the snake is safely contained in its proper enclosure. If the snake were to be venomous or an invasive species, further measures would be required, but in this case, immediate action to return the pet to its owner is sufficient. Question 25. A wildlife control officer is called to deal with a family of squirrels that has taken up residence in a residential attic. The squirrels are not causing immediate damage, but the homeowner is worried they may chew on electrical wires, causing a fire hazard. What is the officer's best course of action? A. Trap the squirrels immediately and release them far away from the residence. B. Advise the homeowner to install deterrents and wait for the squirrels to leave naturally. C. Contact pest control company to handle the issue, as squirrels are a nuisance animal. D. Ensure the squirrels are trapped humanely and relocate them to safer environment, ensuring the attic is sealed. Answer D. Ensure the squirrels are trapped humanely and relocate them to a safer environment, ensuring the attic is sealed. Explanation: the officer should approach this situation with a focus on both the safety of the animals and the homeowner's concerns. The squirrels should be trapped humanely, relocated to an appropriate area, and the attic should be sealed to prevent future infestations. Leaving the squirrels to relocate naturally could risk damage or injury. Trapping them immediately without relocation would be irresponsible. Involving a pest control company isn't appropriate for wildlife management without proper qualifications. Question 26. An animal control officer notices that a kennel operator is housing several dogs in overcrowded conditions with insufficient space to move. While the dogs have access to food and water, they are showing signs of distress, such as excessive barking and pacing. What should the officer do in this situation? A. Issue a fine for overcrowding and allow the kennel operator time to remedy the situation. B. Order the immediate removal of the dogs and the closure of the kennel. C. Educate the kennel operator on the importance of adequate space and recommend improvements. D. Leave the situation as it is, since the dogs are being fed and watered. Answer: B. Order the immediate removal of the dogs and the closure of the kennel. Explanation: in this case, the dogs are showing clear signs of distress, which may indicate that their welfare is being compromised. Overcrowding leads to mental and physical health problems, even if food and water are provided. The officer is required to act quickly to protect the animals, ensuring they are removed from the unsuitable conditions. The kennel operator should be informed of the severity of the situation and required to take corrective action under relevant animal welfare laws. Question 27, scenario-based. James, an animal control officer, is called to a property where a neighbor's dog has been barking incessantly for several days. James discovers that the dog is not being left outside but is inside a small apartment with only few toys and minimal interaction. The dog is not being harmed but is showing signs of anxiety. What should James do next? A. Issue citation to the dog's owner for neglect. B. Recommend to the owner that they seek professional help for the dog's anxiety and increase its socialization. C. Confiscate the dog and bring it to shelter for care. D. Leave the situation as it is, as there is no immediate risk to the dog's well-being. Answer: B. Recommend to the owner that they seek professional help for the dog's anxiety and increase its socialization. Explanation: while the dog's anxiety is concerning, it is not a case of neglect or abuse. Instead, James should focus on educating the dog owner about the signs of anxiety and suggest professional help such as behaviorist or trainer to help the dog cope, increasing the dog's socialization and providing mental stimulation. Significantly improve its behavior. Seizing the dog would be an extreme measure, especially since the animal is not in immediate harm. Question 28. An animal control officer responds to a report of a potentially injured deer in a rural area. The officer finds the deer with a leg injury but is uncertain whether it is severe enough to warrant intervention. What is the best course of action for the officer to take? A. Leave the deer alone and allow it to heal naturally, as wildlife should not be disturbed. B. Call a licensed wildlife rehabilitator to assess and treat the injury if necessary. C. Attempt to treat the injury on site using available resources. D. Immediately euthanize the deer to prevent further suffering. Answer: B. Call a licensed wildlife rehabilitator to assess and treat the injury if necessary. Explanation: in situations where wildlife is injured, the officer should not take matters into their own hands but should contact a licensed wildlife rehabilitator who has the proper training and resources to assess the situation. Attempting to treat the animal without expertise could cause more harm, and leaving it alone might not always be the best decision if injury is severe. Euthanizing the animal would be inappropriate unless it is deemed absolutely necessary by a qualified professional. Question 29. A local farmer has been raising livestock on his property but has received several complaints from neighbors about the smell from his manure storage area. The farmer is following all local zoning laws and maintaining the required distance from neighboring properties. What action should the animal control officer take in this situation? A. Issue a citation for nuisance and require the farmer to move the manure storage. B. Investigate the situation further and educate the farmer on best practices for odor control. C. Leave the situation as it is, since the farmer is complying with zoning laws. D. Immediately order the farmer to cease all farming activities until the smell is resolved. Answer: B. Investigate the situation further and educate the farmer on best practices for odor control. Explanation: while the farmer is complying with zoning laws, the officer should investigate the situation further and assess whether any mitigation strategies can be put in place to address the complaints. Educating the farmer about proper manure management techniques and offering solutions such as covering or relocating the manure pile may help resolve the issue without issuing citations. This approach focuses on resolving the issue through education and cooperation rather than escalating the situation. Question 30. A pet store owner is found to be selling exotic birds without proper documentation, which is a violation of local wildlife regulations. The birds are being kept in small cages and show signs of stress. What should the animal control officer do? A. Find the store owner and allow them to continue operating with a warning. B. Confiscate the birds and issue a citation for violating wildlife regulations. C. Work with the pet store owner to obtain the necessary permits and monitor the situation. D. Allow the pet store to continue operating with a warning, as the birds are not in immediate danger. Answer: B. Confiscate the birds and issue a citation for violating wildlife regulations. Explanation: in this case, the pet store is in clear violation of wildlife regulations by selling exotic birds without the proper documentation. The officer should immediately confiscate the birds to ensure their safety and well-being, while also issuing a citation for the regulatory violation, allowing the pet store to continue selling without permit. Monitoring the situation would be irresponsible, especially since the birds are showing signs of stress. Proper documentation and permits are essential for the legal sale and care of exotic animals.